The movie begins by showing a group of popular male students named Namju, Thohua, and Baekhyung are known as A3, walking in the halls of an elite school called Suli School. From the opposite direction, a student named Juda, who was carrying many things, accidentally bumped into and kissed Namju on the cheek. Because Juda is a poor girl who received a scholarship at the school, her presence is not welcome, even though her friends often bully her. Namju and Juda are the main characters in the world of comics that are currently running, where in the story Namju, the school owner's son, falls in love with Juda. Soon after, Namju saw Juda fall and her luggage scattered. None of the students cared about her except for Dan Oh, a rich child known to be humble. When Dan Oh leaves the hall, she suddenly jumps from place to the future until she is in class during the midterm exams. She notices the strangeness and thinks that she has lost her memory. However, it is a transition from every scene she acts out in the comic because it follows the storyline that the author describes. One day, Dan Oh gets a scene where she has to talk to Baekhyung, who is always cold to her because they both have to get engaged as their family plans. In this scene, Dan Oh is forced to say a dialogue prepared for her character, which was created to love Baekhyung even though her love is not reciprocated. After the scene ends, she regains control of her body and swears at him because she doesn't really like her fiancé. Another day, Dan Oh suddenly gets a picture of the future that will happen, like her encounter with Baekhyung and her classmate, who is about to be bullied by some girls in the cafeteria. While at the cafeteria, she can't help her friend because all of that is a story that has been determined by the writer. Dan Oh is so frustrated that she's confused about what happened to her. Not long after, Dan Oh sees a portal appear, but everyone around her seems oblivious to the portal except for a canteen guard named Jinmin Chai. Knowing this, Dan Oh immediately meets Jinmin Chai in the canteen. Like her, Jinmin Chai was also created as a supporting character in the comic. Soon after, he gives Dan Oh a comic titled Secret and reveals that they are both supporting characters in the comic. He said he had been through something like her for a long time. Even though they realize that, just like the other characters, they can only follow the storyline that has been created. Dan Oh then opens the comic and is surprised to see that her character has a heart disease with a short lifespan. Even though she initially doesn't believe it, she finally tries to ignore it and thinks that if she is the main comic character, she will have a happy ending. However, she realizes she is a supporting character when she follows the author's storyline. One night, Dan Oh returns to visit Jinmin Chai, who will explain how the world of comics works. Jinmin Chai said that when the time and place suddenly change, it means that the character is on stage, so the body will lose control and can only say certain lines. The glimpse of the future that Dan Oh has seen is a storyboard being designed by the author. When the scene is over, it is shadow mode or a backstage situation. All conscious characters like Dan Oh and Jinmin Chai are free to do whatever they want in the comic world, while the characters who are not aware of this will live according to the author's will and will not remember anything. An object can float on the stage when the author's imagination is still abstract. Everything done by Dan Oh or other characters who have the same awareness can never change the storyline because the story will follow again according to the storyboard written by the author. One day, Dan Oh gets a scene together with Baekhyung who makes her hurt and cry. Realizing that her life in the comics is unfair, Dan Oh is determined to change her destiny. Some time passed, and Dan Oh had a vision of the future that she will fall down the stairs and seriously injure her leg while at school. When the scene happened, she couldn't avoid it, so she fell down the school stairs. However, suddenly a mysterious male student enters while the scene is happening. When Dan Oh wakes up, she wakes up in the school infirmary and realizes she isn't as badly injured as in the flash of the future she saw. With that incident, she thinks she has a chance to change the comic's storyline and decides to find the mysterious male student who has been helping her. After searching for quite a while, Dan Oh finally met the student. However, suddenly she had a turn to play a sick scene, so she had to move to a hospital. The next day, Dan Oh walks into her class, and she is surprised to see that the student she's looking for is her classmate. She looks at the list of students in her class and finds out that the student doesn't have a name with absent number 13. At Jinmin Chai's place, Dan Oh said that she had difficulty communicating with student number 13, because in the comic, he was only an extra character whose face was not even clearly described by the author. Hence, his whereabouts were hard to find. Suddenly, Thohua realizes Dan Oh is a comic character, then he comes there. After seeing the comic Dan Oh read, Thohua finally knows she was created as the lead character who will be involved in a love triangle with Juda and Namju. Day by day, Dan Oh's health is getting worse, so she has to go to the hospital frequently. However, she tries to be optimistic about determining her destiny in the comic. One day, Dan Oh meets student number 13 again and realizes she can change comic story variables. During the meeting, she became fascinated with student number 13 because of his attention to her. Unfortunately, he doesn't remember anything while he is backstage, like a character who hasn't realized they are a comic character. Even so, whenever Dan Oh meets him, she never tires of reintroducing herself. On the other hand, Bae Kyung's father hopes that his son's marriage to Dan Oh will go well so that his company can get investment from Dan Oh's family company. Sadly, Bae Kyung seems to always be blamed when his father's relationship with Dan Oh's family is not good, so he is always forced to accept Dan Oh even though he doesn't like her. Bae Kyung, depressed by the situation, finally blamed and really hated Dan Oh because he thought all of this was caused by her, who liked him. Hearing this, Dan Oh feels sad. One day, the school held a summer camp event. At the event, Dan Oh receives a scene where she gets lost in the woods and gets a flash of the future that Bae Kyung will come to save her. She waits for his arrival, but suddenly the storyline changes after student number 13 finds her before the scene of Bae Kyung rescuing her happens. Because she was scared, Dan Oh hugged student number 13 and realized he could speak. Knowing that, Dan Oh is quite surprised because he had previously never wanted to say anything when they met. But because of this, Dan Oh gets a new hope to change her destiny in the comic world. Then they find their way out of the forest, and student number 13 gives his long shirt to her. Not long after, they arrived at a very beautiful place in the forest. Suddenly, student number 13 asks Dan Oh about the place. She only replied that she didn't know the place, but she was happy to meet and be with him. Then she asked if she could call him Haru. Afterward, she moved on to another scene in the comic. At a banquet dinner, Dan Oh's parents seem disappointed with the Bae Kyung family because Dan Oh has been looking gloomy lately. Because of this, when Bae Kyung and his father got home, his father was angry with him and beat him. In the following days, Dan Oh gives gifts to Bae Kyung and is always sweet to his fiancée even though he never liked her because, in the story, he was Dan Oh's first love since 10 years ago. However, when her scene ends and is backstage, Dan Oh ignores Bae Kyung because she thinks liking him will only hurt her. Bae Kyung, who saw the difference in her attitude, became confused and felt she was playing with him. At school, Bae Kyung finds Dan Oh sitting around the field. He is annoyed that he continues to be a punchbag for his father's anger because of his arranged marriage with Dan Oh. Because of that, he blames Dan Oh's feelings for him and mocks her heart disease. Dan Oh, who heard this, looked annoyed at Bae Kyung. Suddenly, student number 13 appears, punches him, and takes Dan Oh from there. Before leaving, student number 13 says his name is Haru. Dan Oh immediately realizes that all this time, Haru could remember things backstage like her. As it turns out, when a portal appears, besides Dan Oh and Jinmin Chai, Haru also sees it, so he is aware that he is a character in a comic even though he doesn't remember who he is and why he is in that world. The only thing that Haru remembers is Dan Oh, so he always looks out for and cares for her as if he was destined for her. Some time has passed, and Dan Oh is very grateful for her life, especially after knowing that Haru is a comic character with the same conscience. The characters who are aware of the world often hang out together. One day, Dan Oh teaches Haru about staging at Jinmin Chai's place. She explained that supporting characters like Dan Oh who are directly related to the main character cannot change the storyline. However, it's different with Haru because he can change it even though it won't be easy. Jinmin Chai, who was there, reminded Haru not to change the author's storyline because it would mess everything up. When they're together, Jinmin Chai, who knows a lot about the world of comics, warns Haru not to get too involved outside of the scenes given to him. He knows that Haru has a scar that will hurt even more if Haru changes the storyline in the comic world. One day, when Suli's school students are seen hanging out, Namju announces that Juda is his errand girl after seeing her mistreated by her friends. He does this to protect her from being harassed by her friends. Then she accepts it as compensation for bumping into him the other day. Seeing Juda's positive attitude during her days at school finally makes Thohua fall in love. Unfortunately, his destiny as the lead character makes him accept that his feelings for Juda must be one-sided. Meanwhile, Namju, as the main character in the comic, always helps her whenever she is in trouble, so they get closer. Suddenly, Dan Oh, who is in class, gets a flash of the future about Namju confessing his feelings to Juda on his birthday. Then Dan Oh immediately told Thohua and Haru about this. Thohua, who likes Juda, doesn't accept the destiny written by the author, so he decides to change his fate like Dan Oh. Like Dan Oh and Haru, he teams up to change the storyline during Namju's birthday celebration. They believe that the slightest change in the storyline will have a big impact in the future, so their destiny will change as Dan Oh, who wants to change the fate of her health, and Haru, who tries to find out the reason he is attracted to Dan Oh. Because of that, Thohua also wants to get the freedom to fight for his love. The next day, Namju's birthday party comes, and Haru, with the freedom that a regular extra has, starts to keep him busy in his office so Thohua can confess his love to Juda. When Thohua meets Juda and confesses his feelings, she feels something is wrong and shouldn't be happening. Thohua, who doesn't get any answer, finally asks her to remember that he loves her. With the efforts of Thohua and his friends, the storyline in the comic can finally change even though it doesn't have much effect. Thohua and Namju's relationship also seems strained after they openly compete for her heart. Meanwhile, Haru decides to stay by Dan Oh's side even though the scar on his hand is getting worse. Then Jinmin Chai reminds him that unknowingly, his actions with Dan Oh and Thohua have messed up the comic world. With her closeness to Haru, Dan Oh realizes that she likes him even more because her heart rate device goes off when she thinks of him, indicating her heart is beating faster than usual. Haru's presence in the story is starting to be accepted. Even his name is now slowly appearing on his identification, which surprises Dan Oh. However, she wonders if it was because of them trying to change the storyline or if it was the author's plan. One time, Dan Oh had a scene of drowning in a swimming pool. Haru, who shouldn't be involved in the scene, actually comes to save her. When she woke up, she was already in the hospital with Bae Kyung accompanying her. Dan Oh saw that Bae Kyung was very worried and sad to see her condition because he remembered his memories of when his mother died of heart disease. Then he chose to leave Dan Oh because he didn't want to experience the same sadness as when he was little. Meanwhile, Dan Oh is currently looking for Haru, whose whereabouts are unknown. When looking at the list of comic characters, his character has disappeared, so Dan Oh immediately goes to Jinmin Chai's place to ask about it. Jinmin Chai explained that everything has returned to normal because the author will remove extras that interfere with the comic's storyline. Hearing that, Dan Oh is shocked and feels guilty about the loss of Haru's character from the comic strip. After Haru's disappearance, Dan Oh lives her days in sorrow. Bae Kyung himself has long realized that he is a character in the comic world. All this time, he's been keeping tabs on Dan Oh and learns that she is trying to change the comic's storyline. Even though he doesn't care about this at first, seeing Dan Oh constantly sad makes Bae Kyung realize that he has had feelings for her all this time. When Bae Kyung is with Dan Oh, he confesses his feelings and asks her to accept her fate in the story. Then Dan Oh says she never hated him because she knew the author had arranged their story. However, she will only like Bae Kyung when she is on stage because she only has feelings for Haru, and she can't let Haru leave the comic world. In the comic, Bae Kyung is told to accept Dan Oh's feelings because of the arranged marriage with his father. However, backstage, he began to pay attention to her, so Dan Oh was surprised by the change in his attitude. Time flies and Haru returns to the world of comics to become a new character who doesn't remember all of his memories with Dan Oh. His character comes as a loyal friend of Bae Kyung. Although initially Bae Kyung is also surprised, but he is getting used to the change. Meanwhile, Dan Oh can only watch Haru from a distance because she can't do anything but hope that his memory will return one day. However, the new character given to Haru did not make him completely forget Dan Oh because, slowly, his memory returned until finally, when he was in the library, he saw a portal. A curious Haru sticks his hand into the portal and he gets his scar back along with all of his memories with Dan Oh. Dan Oh, distraught with her destiny in the comic, keeps blaming herself and hopes that she becomes an extra who has no awareness so that she doesn't torment herself. Suddenly, Haru arrives and says if she becomes an unconscious extra, he will forever be a nameless student number 13 character. Seeing that, Dan Oh is surprised and relieved by the arrival of Haru who remembers her. Haru's return to comics is so distracting to Bae Kyung that he tries to look for the secret comic in the library to see what the story is about, but he can't find it. After that, he is interested in seeing an old comic book, Trumpet Flower, with the character Dan Oh in it. While Bae Kyung is reading the comic, suddenly Jinmin Chai comes and snatches the comic. At night, Jinmin Chai burns the comic Trumpet Flower that Bae Kyung found earlier. The next day, Bae Kyung looks at some unburned comics and learns they are about his life in the Joseon era. On the other hand, Jinmin Chai is afraid that his bad memories of the past will repeat themselves. Meanwhile, after Haru returned to his memory, he and Dan Oh were together a lot and seemed very happy. One night, Dan Oh tells him that the big tree at their school is hundreds of years old, and according to people, October 10th will be the tree's 363rd birthday. She believes that the story was made up by the author, but the fact that the tree has been growing for hundreds of years ago makes it very special. Then she invites Haru to meet at the tree every October 10th, hoping that they will meet for a long time like that tree. On October 10th, Dan Oh and Haru are waiting to meet at the tree. However, a few days before the day of their meeting, Dan Oh suddenly has to be in the hospital following the comic's storyline. The scene continues moving from one scene to another, like Haru, who keeps changing scenes. As the days go by, she finally misses Haru because she has to be in a scene written by the author. One night, after Dan Oh left the hospital, she ran to the meeting place and saw Haru waiting there. He confesses his feelings to her, and they have formed a relationship backstage since that night. After doing many things with Dan Oh, Haru begins to get memories of the past when he was with her. He is surprised that what they are doing now, he did in the past. Confused by the situation, Haru met Jinmin Chai, told him about it, and revealed that the author was not creative because he repeated the same story. Jinmin Chai explained that his memory comes from a comic entitled Trumpet Flower, written by the same author as the comic Secret. Jinmin Chai reminds Haru not to provoke the author if he doesn't want any of the characters to get hurt because, in the end, he and Dan Oh weren't meant to be together. Moving on to the story in the comic Trumpet Flower with a royal background in the Joseon era. In the comic story, Haru is destined to become Prince Bae Kyung's loyal bodyguard, and the Queen of the Kingdom, Bae Kyung's mother, who died after being killed by a mistress, who is Jinmin Chai's mother in the comic Secret. With the queen dead, the throne finally falls to Jinmin Chai, but Bai Kyung refuses to submit to his leadership. Then one of the nobles instigates Bai Kyung to take revenge so that he can get back the throne by making the official Eun Dan Oh's father, side with him. To achieve this goal, Bai Kyung is assisted by Haru to approach Dan Oh and captivate her. Then she slowly likes him until they both finally agree to get married. However, Bai Kyung's cold demeanor makes Dan Oh hesitate, so she changes her mind and calls off the wedding. Then he tries to restore Dan Oh's trust and asks Haru to help him. However, in the process, Haru and Dan Oh gain awareness of the characters they are playing. On the other hand, Jinmin Chai has regained his senses and finds out that he was an extra a long time ago and explains the comic world to Haru. In the end, Dan Oh and Haru are attracted to each other and have a relationship backstage. On one occasion, he takes her to a place in a forest, the same place where Dan Oh named Haru. Their meetings seem to have become fate, making them meet again in another story. The story in the comic continues, and now Bai Kyung, who wants to rule the kingdom, orders Haru to force Dan Oh to marry him. Even he asks Haru not to hesitate to kill Dan Oh if she refuses. Meanwhile, Jinmin Chai, as the king, is involved in a forbidden love story because he loves a palace maid named Soo-hyang. When he discovers Bai Kyung is about to stage a coup d'etat, he runs away and walks out of the palace with Soo-hyang. In the comic story Secret, Nam-ju tries to approach Juda to win her heart. Meanwhile, though Hua continues to be considered a friend by Juda even though he has confessed his feelings many times. Eventually, he tries to accept his destiny as a lead character who can't win against the main character in the story, although at the same time, he hopes that a miracle will change the storyline in the comic world he is currently living. On the other hand, Haru plays Bai Kyung's best friend even though they don't get along backstage. One day, when Dan Oh is spending time with Haru backstage, she gets a glimpse of the future that she will be proposed to by Bai Kyung after the author develops the character of Bai Kyung who finally really falls in love with her character, who loves him all along. However, Haru manages to change the storyline so that Bai Kyung's proposal can be thwarted. Bai Kyung is mad at him because he keeps messing up the comic's storyline. Meanwhile, Dan Oh thanks Haru for helping her thwart the proposal. A happy Dan Oh hugs him, and suddenly, she sees the future while she is on the operating table. She is surprised by the flash but doesn't tell Haru because she's afraid he will get worried. At the same time, Haru recalls a tragic memory in the past when he killed Dan Oh with his own hands. Even though the memory is vague, he still feels guilty and responsible for what happened. He is afraid that the events in the past will repeat themselves. Meanwhile, Jinmin Chai accidentally sees a transfer student who looks like Soo-hyang, his past girlfriend. In the story of Trumpet Flower in the past, Prince Bai Kyung finally takes over the kingdom after carrying out a coup d'etat. Meanwhile, Jinmin Chai, who tried to change the storyline by running away from the palace, instead met Bai Kyung's troops behind the stage, so he was arrested, and his girlfriend had to lose her life. After Jinmin Chai returns to the palace and becomes king, Soo-hyang's character returns to life with no memories of her previous life and enters the palace. However, Bai Kyung eventually killed her, who knew Jinmin Chai had feelings for her so that he could feel what it's like to lose a loved one. Because of this, Jinmin Chai lost his will to live after knowing that his end was approaching. When he meets Haru, he informs him that Bai Kyung will target Dan Oh's life to overthrow the current government. He hopes Haru can change his storyline so that Haru doesn't suffer like him. After Bai Kyung fails to negotiate with Dan Oh's family to side with him, he decides to get rid of the family. Backstage, Haru tries to warn Dan Oh to be careful. However, the story in the comic continues. And now Dan Oh is in the scene with the king, Jinmin Chai. Not knowing that she is being framed, Dan Oh gives the food that Bai Kyung has poisoned to the king. Finally, she becomes a suspect on charges of poisoning the king to death. Then, Haru tries to save her and asks her to run away. But this failed because, in the storyline, Dan Oh was caught, and Bai Kyung ordered Haru to kill her, who had poisoned the king. Forcefully, Haru kills Dan Oh, and their love story ends tragically. In the comic Secret, Jinmin Chai did not expect to be recreated in a different world while still carrying past memories. While with Haru, he revealed that he saw similarities in the stories in the comics Secret and Trumpet Flower. Because of that, he always insists on forbidding Haru not to change the storyline, which could hurt many people. Meanwhile, Dan Oh pretends to stay cheerful in front of Haru even though her illness worsens. However, when she is alone, she cries, begging the author to let her live. Unknown to Dan Oh, Haru hears all of her wishes, and he discovers her condition is worsening. Because of that, he tries to change the comic storyline so that past events don't happen again. Shortly after, Haru sneaks into the hospital to find Dan Oh's medical files. After finding the file, he exchanges it for someone else's health file so the story can change. Dan Oh, who had a checkup with her father, received news that her condition was improving so that she did not need surgery. After Dan Oh found out that Haru changed her fate in the comics, she was very grateful to him. At school, Jinmin Chai seemed to be sitting alone in the park. And suddenly, Soo-hyang came over to him to get acquainted because he looked familiar to her. However, Jinmin Chai refused because he didn't want to get too involved to keep the comic storyline going. Not long after, Bae Kyung, who had suspected that Jinmin Chai knew about his past life, noticed he was with Soo-hyang. On another occasion, Bae Kyung tries to find information about himself in the past from Soo-hyang because he thinks that she is close to Jinmin Chai and knows about it. Jinmin Chai, who saw that Bae Kyung was trying to dig up information from Soo-hyang, looked angry and took him to talk outside alone. An emotional Jinmin Chai says that his girlfriend died twice because of him. However, Bae Kyung is confused by what Jinmin Chai is talking about and asks him to explain everything. He finally tells the truth about Bae Kyung and explains that someone who dies backstage will come back to life with lost memories, but someone who dies on stage will disappear from the story forever. On the other hand, Dan Oh has been cured by the doctor and is now enjoying being with Haru in a park. Suddenly her heart disease recurred, so she had to be rushed to the hospital. Seeing Dan Oh helpless behind the scenes, Bae Kyung thinks of killing her so that she can live again as a new character who remembers nothing and can love him like before. However, he doesn't do it because he knows it's wrong. Even so, in the end, Dan Oh had to die backstage. When Dan Oh's character comes back to life, she can't remember anything, including being with Haru, so when he greets her, Dan Oh doesn't react to anything. On the other hand, Dan Oh immediately leaves Haru and hangs out with her friends. Haru, who saw that, felt very sad and reminisced about all the times they had together before. Now, Dan Oh is back as a character who loves Bae Kyung and knows Haru as an ordinary friend. Haru didn't expect this to happen to him. While visiting Jinmin Chai's place, Haru learns that the comic strip will end soon. Then Jinmin Chai explained that after the comic ends, all the characters will fall into a deep sleep until the author draws their characters again. He also said that supporting characters shouldn't get the writer's attention, and that it's time for all of them to disappear. Haru, knowing that he doesn't have much time left, tries not to give up trying to restore Dan Oh's memory. On the other hand, Juda realizes that she is a comic character. She finds out that Namju and Thohua truly love her. Even though Juda is initially confused, in the end, she chooses to be by Namju's side, according to the plot written by the author. While with Thohua, Juda says that he will still be happy without her, but Namju will lose his life without her. Hearing that, Thohua understands and accepts her decision. After that, the friendship between them got better again. In class, Haru sees that the comic is only a few scenes from the ending, but Dan Oh still hasn't gotten her memory back. Until now, she doesn't understand why Haru always tries to get close to her. She also doesn't understand why her heart rate goes up whenever Haru is near her. She even once cried after seeing him. One day, Bae Kyung and Dan Oh get a scene showing their togetherness and happiness. However, after the scene ends, she accidentally refers to him as Haru, making his heart broken and realizing that Dan Oh is still thinking about Haru even though she is unconscious. Time flies and Bae Kyung gets a chance to kiss Dan Oh in another scene. However, as soon as the stage ends, he stops the scene, making Dan Oh a little confused. He doesn't want to be someone who forces him to love because he knows that deep down in Dan Oh's subconscious, she hasn't been able to forget Haru. On another occasion, Dan Oh gets the scene of meeting Bae Kyung near a big tree, and as she walks towards it, she feels her heart skip a beat. Upon arriving, she sees Bae Kyung turning his back on her. Then she talks about their childhood while laying her back against his. Suddenly, Dan Oh's head hurts, and all her memories of being with Haru return. As it turns out, the man she meets that night is Haru, who wants to be with her one last time. Haru reveals that his character will disappear as long as Dan Oh can be happy. Dan Oh, who has regained her memory, says she is very happy to see him again. Then he hugs her because he knows that extra characters like him will disappear from the comics before the story is over. He says that every moment of his life was destined for Dan Oh, and in the final scene, he will remember her. The next day, Dan Oh comes to see Bae Kyung at her house. He explains that the night before, he met Haru to switch roles because he knew that Dan Oh still remembered Haru, which was also a form of his resentment towards the author. Although at first Bae Kyung wasn't sure if it would work, but now he's happy because it brings Dan Oh's memory back. He apologizes for his past and present's rude behavior. However, Dan Oh doesn't mind this and explains that they are just characters created by the author. Then she thanks Bae Kyung, and she forgives all the things he did in the past. After that, she returns the engagement ring to him, and wishes each other the best. At Jinmin Chai's place, he is currently with Soo-hyang and is happy that he could meet his past girlfriend. Meanwhile, Haru notices that his friends have disappeared, including the name on his name tag. In fact, now several classes have been empty and turned into a vacuum. Before his departure, Haru tries to fulfill all of Dan Oh's wish lists. Soon after, Haru goes to see Bae Kyung to thank him for his sacrifice. With his cold demeanor, Bae Kyung says he's just doing what he's supposed to do. Not long after, they met Jinmin Chai, who suggested they all make peace and forget each other's past. Currently, Namju and Juda, the comic's main characters, have had a happy ending. Meanwhile, Dan Oh is still looking for Haru until she finds him in the library. Suddenly, the room gets darker, so she asks him out of there. Suddenly, Haru apologizes to Dan Oh because he couldn't protect her in the past and couldn't accompany her until the last scene. When the room goes completely dark, he disappears. 1 year later, the Seuli students celebrate their graduation. Jinmin Chai was seen accompanying Soo Hyun, who was celebrating graduation. At that time, she admitted that she had long been aware of her existence as a comic character and recognized Jinmin Chai in the past. Hearing this, he was very happy and hugged her. After taking a group photo and saying goodbye to Bae Kyung, Dan Oh goes to a big tree to reminisce about her memories with Haru. She accidentally finds a small book describing her meeting with Haru. She cries after realizing that the book belongs to Haru, who was left behind, and hugs the book until finally, the comic story secret is finished. Moving on to another new story, Dan Oh is described as more mature, with long hair and running on campus because she was late for class. Then she sees some familiar students in the class even though their roles are now very different. At the library, a man is seen returning a book of poetry which Dan Oh then takes. When she goes outside to read the book, a blue butterfly flies by, and she follows the butterfly to an art exhibition on campus. In the rows of artwork on display, Dan Oh sees a picture of a girl and a boy sitting together under a tree. At that time, she felt something was bothering her after seeing the picture and knowing it was October 10th. Finally, she decides to look for the tree in the picture. After finding it, she sits there for a while and then leaves the tree as if nothing happened. At the end of the play, showing, Dan Oh suddenly remembers her promise to Haru to meet at the tree every October 10th, so she comes back and sees him there. Because Haru doesn't recognize her, Dan Oh is disappointed and leaves the picture before deciding to leave. Before she walks away, Haru calls her and hugs her, saying that he misses her so much. The moral that can be learned from this movie is, never give up on something because everyone is the main character in their own story.